The moon hung heavy over the gathering grounds, its silver light spilling across the stone circle where the entire kingdom had assembled. Tonight was the mate revealing ceremony, the night every unmated wolf dreamed of. The air throbbed with anticipation, with whispers of destiny and fate. Evelyn stood at the farthest edge of the circle, hands trembling against her worn dress. She had no fine silks, no glittering jewelry like the daughters of high-ranked wolves. Omegas like her never did. But still her heart thudded with fragile hope. She dared to dream. Maybe tonight. Maybe the moon goddess won't overlook me. Her eyes kept drifting to him. Prince Darius, the Alpha Prince, heir to the throne. Tall, broad-shouldered, with raven hair and piercing steel-gray eyes that seemed to slice through everyone who dared look at him. He stood proud in the center, surrounded by warriors, his wolf's aura suffocating the air. Evelyn had felt it for months, the strange pull toward him, the flutter in her chest whenever his eyes brushed hers. She had prayed, begged even, that the bond would be revealed tonight. If fate was merciful, if the goddess was kind, she would be his. "Step forward," the high priestess called. One by one, the unmated wolves entered the circle, waiting for the sacred pull to bind them. Cheers erupted when matches were revealed, pairs clasping hands, wolves howling in joy. Then it was Evelyn's turn. Her breath stuttered as she walked forward, head bowed under the weight of judgmental stares. The crowd whispered cruel things, the useless Omega, the burden, the nobody. But the moment she stepped into the circle, it happened. A snap, a rush of heat, a surge of undeniable power that nearly brought her to her knees. Her wolf howled inside her, the bond locked into place. Her gaze lifted and collided with Darius's. It was him, the Alpha Prince, her mate. Gasps erupted around the circle. Shock rippled through the crowd like lightning. And Omega, fated to the prince? Impossible. Evelyn's heart soared, trembling on the edge of tears. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. For the first time, fate had chosen her. But then, his lips curled, not in wonder, not in joy, in disgust. "I reject you." The words fell like a blade, sharp and merciless. Silence swallowed the grounds. Evelyn staggered as though struck, her breath knocked from her chest. She searched his eyes desperately, waiting for a crack, for a sign he didn't mean it. But Darius's expression was carved from stone, cold, ruthless. "I will never accept you as my mate," he said, his voice loud enough for every wolf present to hear. "I would sooner die than bind myself to an Omega like you." Laughter erupted from some of the pack. Others gasped, horrified. Evelyn's cheeks burned with shame, tears stinging her eyes as the world tilted beneath her feet. Her wolf whimpered in agony, clawing at her chest, rejected, publicly, brutally. Her knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself to stand. She wouldn't crumble. Not here, not in front of them. But then she felt it. A gaze. Heavy, unshakable. Her eyes lifted, and there, at the edge of the circle, stood the Alpha King. Kalen. Older, broader. His presence was darker, heavier than even his son's. His eyes, a piercing gold, locked onto hers. Unreadable. Calculating. And while the world laughed at her shame, the king did not. He simply watched, silent and still, as though he saw something no one else could. Darius sneered, stepping closer, his voice cutting through her thoughts like steel. "Did you hear me, Omega? I reject you. You will never be mine." The crowd roared with shock and Evelyn swayed on trembling legs. But above the noise, one truth chilled her blood. The Alpha King's eyes had not left her, not even once. The laughter followed her like knives in the dark. Evelyn pushed through the crowd, her vision blurred by unshed tears, her wolf keening in her chest. She didn't wait for the ceremony to end. She didn't care that leaving before the priestess's dismissal was considered dishonor. The dishonor had already been branded on her skin, burned into her bones. She ran, out of the circle, past the firelight, into the cold shadows of the forest. Her lungs burned, her legs shook, but she didn't stop. Not until the pack's jeers were swallowed by silence. There, in the hollow of trees, she fell to her knees. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to the dirt, as if grounding herself could silence the hollow ache in her chest. The bond, so newly awakened, was already tearing apart, fraying under the weight of rejection. She could feel it, like claws ripping at her insides. "Why?" she whispered into the night. "Why would the goddess curse me like this?" Her wolf whimpered, curling in pain. And Evelyn stayed there broken until the forest shifted around her. The air thickened, the trees seemed to bow. A presence pressed in on her, ancient and suffocating. She lifted her head, breath hitching. He stood there. The Alpha King. Kalen's golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark, fixed on her with unnerving intensity. His figure was a shadow of power, taller and broader than his son, his aura so vast it seemed to bend the night itself. He didn't move at first, just watched. Evelyn scrambled back, her heart pounding. "Your Majesty." "Do not bow." Kalen's voice cut through, deep and commanding. "Not to me. Not when you are like this." She froze, confusion trembling through her. "Like this?" He stepped closer, the ground itself seeming to answer his tread. His gaze sharpened, nostrils flaring slightly as though scenting her. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, quickly masked by intrigue. "There it is," he murmured. Her pulse quickened. "There what?" "Your scent," Kalen said, his tone low, reverent almost. "It's buried, faint, but I know it. A bloodline long thought extinct." Evelyn shook her head, clutching her chest. "I'm nothing. Just an omega. Nothing more." His lips curved. Not in mockery, but something far more dangerous. "You are not nothing. You are the opposite." He circled her like a predator, but his gaze was not cruel. It was searching, peeling back the layers of her shame. She felt stripped bare, as though he could see straight into her soul. "Tell me," Kalen said softly, his voice dipping into something darker. "Did you truly believe the moon goddess would waste destiny on my son?" Evelyn flinched. "He's the prince. He's supposed to—" "No," Kalen interrupted, his golden eyes blazing. "You were never meant for my son." The night held its breath. Kalen stepped closer until his shadow fell over her, his voice dropping into a whisper meant only for her ears. "You were meant for me." Evelyn's breath caught, her wolf stirring violently inside her chest, not in protest but in recognition. The Alpha King's words still echoed in Evelyn's mind as she stumbled behind him through the forest path. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her wolf stirred uneasily, as if Kalen's presence awakened instincts she couldn't understand. But how could this be right? She was nothing. An omega, rejected and disgraced before the entire pack. And yet the king. He moved with certainty, his golden eyes unwavering, as though he had plucked her fate straight from the goddess's hands. When they emerged into the torchlit clearing of the palace gates, whispers surged. Guards stiffened, servants froze mid-step. The Alpha King rarely brought anyone into his inner circle. To stride beside him? Unthinkable. "She's the prince's reject," someone hissed. "A usurper." Another spat. Evelyn flinched at every word, wishing the ground would open and swallow her whole. But Kalen's aura silenced most before their whispers became shouts. He didn't touch her, didn't need to. His mere presence announced to the world that she was under his protection. Still, the resentment burned. Inside the marble halls, beneath chandeliers dripping gold, she felt more out of place than ever. The palace wasn't meant for someone like her. And yet Kalen's low, commanding tone left no room for refusal. "You'll stay here," he said, ushering her into a chamber far grander than any space she'd known. "Until I decide what is to be done." Evelyn turned to him, her throat dry. "Your Majesty, why are you doing this?" His gaze lingered on her, unreadable. Because destiny does not make mistakes. Only men do. Before she could reply, the door burst open. Darius, the Alpha Prince, stormed in, his aura a storm of fury. His wolf bristled beneath his skin, his eyes already glowing with the edge of a shift. "What is she doing here?" His voice cracked like thunder. "You bring her into our home after she tricked the bond?" Evelyn's heart clenched. "I didn't—" "Silence!" Darius snapped, his words striking her like a lash. But Kaelin's gaze flicked to his son, cold and sharp. "Mind your tongue, boy. She is under my protection now." The room seemed to crack with tension. Darius's fists curled, his jaw clenched, but he dared not defy his father openly. Not yet. He turned his glare on Evelyn, eyes burning with loathing. "You won't last here. No one wants you." With a final snarl, he stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Evelyn's knees nearly buckled, her wolf quivering with confusion and fear. She hadn't wanted this. Any of it. Yet now she was the center of a war she hadn't asked for. That night, sleep evaded her. The palace, though gilded, felt like a cage. The whispers of servants bled through the walls, their venomous words branding her as an intruder. Her heart longed for silence, but silence never came. Instead, a low growl rolled through the darkness. Evelyn sat up, her pulse racing. From beyond the barred balcony doors, two golden eyes glowed in the night. Darius's wolf. He paced in slow, deliberate circles, his growl deepening with each step, his gaze fixed entirely on her. Fury burned in his stance and the violent snap of his jaw, and Evelyn realized he wasn't just watching, he was hunting. Her breath hitched as his massive wolf form pressed closer to the glass, claws scraping, as if testing the strength of the barrier between them. The glow of golden eyes seared through the glass, unblinking. Evelyn's breath caught as Darius's wolf prowled along her balcony, each movement deliberate, predatory. His claws screeched against the marble, sending a shiver down her spine. Her wolf whimpered inside her. He can't come in. He won't dare. But the balcony doors rattled violently under the weight of his body. With a terrifying crack, the latch gave way. Glass shattered inward, shards scattering across the chamber floor. Evelyn stumbled back as the massive black wolf leapt inside, teeth bared, fur bristling with rage. "Darius, please," she gasped, pressing against the wall. The wolf growled, eyes glowing like molten suns. His breath was hot and savage, his intent unmistakable. He wanted to mark her, to burn his rejection into her flesh again, but this time not with words, with teeth. She darted toward the door, but he was faster. His massive body pinned her, claws grazing her shoulder, hot saliva dripping from his maw. Evelyn cried out, shoving against his chest, but he was too strong. His fangs grazed her neck, the edge of a forced claim. "No!" Her wolf flared inside her, a burst of raw energy that sent a shockwave between them. Darius staggered, but only for a heartbeat. His growl deepened, more feral, more determined. His muzzle snapped down again. The door burst open. "Enough!" The air shifted violently, as though the storm itself had been dragged into the room. The Alpha King's aura filled the chamber, suffocating in its intensity. Kaelin moved faster than Evelyn could blink, his hand closing around the wolf's throat. With a single brutal motion, he hurled Darius across the chamber. The prince crashed against the wall, shifting back midair. His naked form slumped to the ground, gasping, his eyes still glowing with hatred. Kaelin stood over him, fury radiating in waves. "You dare touch her under my roof?" Darius's voice was hoarse, feral. "She's mine to destroy, my reject, my shame." The king's hand tightened on his son's throat again, lifting him until his feet barely brushed the floor. "She was never yours." His words were a low growl, deadly and final. "Try again, and I will end you, heir or not." Evelyn's heart thundered, her entire body trembling as she pressed back against the wall. For a moment, she thought Kaelin might actually do it, snap his son's neck and let the war drums beat from his own palace. But at the last second, Kaelin released him. Darius crumpled to the ground, coughing, his pride more broken than his body. His glare flicked to Evelyn, a silent promise that this wasn't over, before he staggered from the chamber, half-shifted and snarling. Silence fell heavy. Evelyn clutched the torn hem of her dress, her skin still tingling where Darius's teeth had grazed her. She didn't realize she was shaking until Kalen turned, his eyes dark with rage and something else she couldn't name. "You're under my protection," he said firmly, his voice softer now but no less dangerous. "No one will touch you again, not even him." Evelyn nodded, but her chest tightened. She had become the fracture line between father and son. By dawn, the palace was alive with whispers. Servants gossiped in hushed tones, nobles murmured in corridors, and the court's messengers carried the story like wildfire. The tale was the same in every retelling. The Omega girl has driven a wedge between the Alpha King and his heir. She will be the reason father and son go to war. And Evelyn knew, deep in her bones, that the whispers were right. As she passed a group of courtiers later that morning, their eyes sharp as daggers, one chilling phrase caught her ear. "The king will burn the prince alive for her." The words echoed in Evelyn's skull long after the courtiers disappeared down the marble hall. She pressed her hand to her chest, heart thundering, the image of Darius's glowing eyes still etched in her mind. Every shadow in the palace felt like it whispered against her skin. She didn't belong here, yet she couldn't leave. Not after Kalen's vow. That night, she was summoned. The great hall was empty except for Kalen, seated on his obsidian throne, his expression carved from stone. The torches along the walls burned low, casting long shadows that seemed to curl toward him. "Come closer," he commanded. His voice, deep and resonant, carried the weight of an alpha who expected no disobedience. Evelyn obeyed, her steps hesitant. She bowed her head, unsure what awaited her. "You wonder why I stopped him," Kalen said slowly, his eyes sharp as blades. "Why I risked tearing this kingdom apart for an Omega." Her lips parted, but no words came. She only nodded faintly. Kalen rose. His presence consumed the hall as he descended the steps. He circled her like a predator, but his eyes weren't cruel. They were searching. "There is something in you, Evelyn. Something my son was too blind to see." He stopped in front of her, his gaze pinning her where she stood. "Your bloodline is not what you've been told. You are no ordinary Omega." Evelyn's breath hitched. "Then, what am I?" Kalen lifted a hand but didn't touch her, hovering just above her shoulder. His aura pressed against hers, testing, probing. Her wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. "I can smell it," he said, voice dropping lower. "Dormant, but undeniable. The blood of the Luna Sovereign runs in you." Her knees weakened. "That's impossible. The Sovereign bloodline died out centuries ago." Kalen's eyes darkened. "Or so we believed. But your rejection by Darius may have awakened what slumbered inside you." Evelyn's head spun. She thought of the surge of energy when Darius had tried to bite her, how her wolf had exploded outward in defense. Had that been it? The sovereign power breaking free? "But why me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Kalen leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear, his words like fire on ice. "Because power chooses, and it has chosen you." Her pulse raced, but beneath the fear, a dangerous spark of something else stirred. Possibility. If what he said was true, she was no longer just the rejected mate of the prince. She was something far more dangerous. Kalen straightened, his expression unreadable. "The Pax will never accept it easily, and my son will never forgive it. But you must decide what you will become, Evelyn." That night, sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, her dreams burned vivid. She stood in a silver forest under a blood-red sky. A colossal wolf, golden as sunlight, stepped from the shadows. Its fur shimmered like molten metal, and its eyes glowed with ancient wisdom. The wolf lowered its head, its voice a whisper inside her mind. You carry the blood of the sovereign, but power alone will not save you. Evelyn reached out, trembling, the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders. The wolf's gaze sharpened, almost mournful. Choose your king wisely. She jolted awake, gasping, the words still echoing inside her skull, and the terrifying truth settling into her bones. It was no longer about Darius's rejection. It was about Kaelin. Evelyn stared into the darkness of her chamber, heart racing. The golden wolf's voice whispered again faintly as though it lingered in the room itself. One path leads to ruin, the other to salvation. The golden wolf's words still rang in Evelyn's ears long after she woke. Choose your king wisely, one path to ruin, the other to salvation. She sat upright in her chamber, her hand clutching the sheets, her body trembling. The vision had felt too real, too heavy to dismiss as a dream, and yet, the more she tried to silence it, the more it coiled within her, like a warning carved into her very soul. Her thoughts were interrupted when guards arrived at dawn, summoning her to the royal council. Her stomach twisted. The halls of the palace were filled with whispers as she passed, sharp glares following her every step. The great council chamber was already crowded. High alphas from allied packs, nobles with silver in their hair, and warriors leaning against pillars. All eyes shifted to her the moment she entered. Some with disdain, some with suspicion, none with warmth. Kaelin stood at the head of the chamber, draped in dark robes that accentuated the commanding breadth of his shoulders. His presence silenced the chamber the instant he raised a hand. Today, the Alpha King announced, his voice ringing against the high stone walls, I lay my claim clear. Evelyn froze, her heart skipping. Kaelin's gaze found her, hard and unflinching, as though the words were carved for her alone. Evelyn will no longer be scorned, hunted, or whispered against. I offer her my protection. A ripple of murmurs tore through the chamber. Then, with the same measured calm that had carried him through wars, Kaelin dropped the words like a blade. I offer her my bond, to stand at my side, as my mate. The chamber erupted. Gasps, shouts, even snarls echoed through the stone hall. An Omega, the rejected mate of his son? To elevate her as queen? It was unthinkable. This is madness, one elder spat, slamming his hand against the table. She is a stain, a danger to the unity of our people. She is the reason Prince and King are at each other's throats, another barked. If you do this, you will divide the kingdom. Evelyn's pulse pounded. The walls seemed to close in as every eye fell on her, some burning with hatred, others with hunger, all measuring her worth. Her wolf stirred inside her chest, restless, unsettled. Kaelin silenced them with one glare. His voice was cold steel. The kingdom was divided the moment my son rejected fate. I will not repeat his blindness. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. He was serious. He meant every word. When the council finally adjourned, Evelyn slipped quietly from the chamber, her head buzzing with disbelief. She could still feel Kaelin's eyes on her, steady, unyielding. Was this protection, or another kind of cage? That night, wandering the quieter halls to clear her head, she froze at the sound of hushed voices. She pressed against the wall, listening. The king has lost his mind, one councilman growled. Then we must act before he binds himself to her, another whispered sharply. Remove her quietly. Make it look like an accident. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Her wolf bristled under her skin as the words sank in, dread clawing at her chest. She wasn't just a pawn in the feud between Prince and King anymore. She was a target. Heart hammering, Evelyn backed away from the corridor, their voices still echoing. Remove her quietly. For the first time she realized the truth. It wasn't just Darius who wanted her gone. The kingdom itself was sharpening its claws. The words wouldn't leave her. Remove her quietly. Evelyn lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her gilded chamber, her wolf pacing restlessly beneath her skin. Sleep never came. By dawn, she had made a choice. She would survive, no matter what they threw at her. When the summons arrived for the royal feast that evening, Evelyn's stomach knotted. The councilman's whispers echoed in her mind, yet refusing would only paint a larger target on her back. She dressed with care, choosing a simple silver gown that clung to her lightly, unadorned, as though she refused to be bait for their scorn. The feast hall glittered with chandeliers and gold, the long tables groaning under platters of roasted meat and spiced wine. Nobles, alphas, and courtiers filled the room, their laughter thin and sharp, their eyes sharper still when they landed on her. Kalen entered at her side, his presence silencing the hall in a single heartbeat. His gaze dared anyone to speak against her. None did, though their whispers crawled like insects in the silence. Evelyn kept her head high as she took her seat near him. She could feel Darius across the table, his jaw clenched, his stare burning into her with barely contained fury. The music swelled, goblets lifted, and the feast began. Evelyn raised her chalice to her lips and froze. A faint, bitter tang brushed her nose beneath the rich aroma of spiced wine. Her wolf recoiled instantly. Alarm flared, but before she could set the cup down, Kalen's hand shot out like lightning, knocking it from her grasp. The chalice clattered against the marble floor, the wine spilling in a dark red splash across her skirts. The hall went silent. Kalen's eyes narrowed, his wolf surging so close to the surface that the air itself thickened with his fury. "Poison," he growled, his voice like thunder. Gasps rippled down the tables. Evelyn's hands trembled as she stared at the stain spreading across her dress. Her mind reeled. She had almost. Kalen stood, towering above the table, his dominance crashing like a storm over the hall. "Who dares touch what is mine?" His roar shook the very rafters, and several courtiers bowed their heads instinctively under the weight of his wrath. Guards rushed to retrieve the fallen chalice. A court alchemist sniffed the rim, his face blanching. "Hemlock," he whispered. "Enough to kill in a single sip." A cold shiver ran down Evelyn's spine. Kalen's fists curled at his sides, his aura rolling dangerously. He turned to the guards. "Find the scent. Now." The goblet was passed, sniffed by wolves trained to track even the faintest trace. Murmurs rose as their nostrils flared, following the invisible thread of betrayal. Then one guard stiffened, his eyes widening. He glanced toward the high table. The scent was familiar. Kalen's growl deepened, a sound primal and lethal. He didn't need the words spoken aloud. He saw it in the guard's expression, smelled it himself now that the truth was uncovered. The scent clinging to the rim of the poisoned chalice did not belong to a stranger. It belonged to his son. Evelyn's breath caught as every head turned toward Darius, whose eyes flashed with something unreadable, fury, desperation, or guilt. The room teetered on the edge of chaos as Kalen's glare fixed on him, the question unspoken, but heavy as iron. "Did my son just try to kill you?" The air in the hall was thick enough to choke. All eyes had shifted to Darius, the Alpha Prince, as the guard's verdict echoed in unspoken horror. Evelyn could hear her heart pounding louder than the murmurs. Kalen's aura pressed down like an avalanche, every wolf in the hall bowing instinctively under the weight. "Explain yourself," the Alpha King snarled, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. Darius rose slowly from his seat, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning like molten gold. "You dare accuse me," he hissed. "Your own blood?" "Your scent was on the chalice," one guard said carefully, bowing low. "We cannot mistake it." A ripple of gasps moved through the room. Evelyn tried to breathe, her wolf writhing inside her skin, torn between terror and defiance. Darius's gaze shifted to her, blazing with something she couldn't name, hatred, jealousy, or something darker. "You," he spat, pointing at her with venom dripping from his voice. "You've twisted my father against me. First you crawl into this palace, then you poison his mind, until he turns against his heir." Kalen's roar silenced the hall. Enough. His fury shook the rafters. Do not speak of treachery when your scent betrays you. But Darius only smirked, lifting his chin with arrogance. You'd throw away your own son for her? The tension snapped taut like a bowstring. Evelyn felt as if the floor itself might break under the weight of their clashing dominance. Finally, Kaelin spoke, voice low but lethal. Leave. Before I forget you are my blood. Gasps rang through the hall. To be dismissed before the entire court. It was humiliation enough to scar forever. Darius's eyes flashed with something wild, but he obeyed, storming out with his wolf simmering beneath his skin. The council murmured in panic, but none dared speak. Later, Evelyn returned to her chamber, her thoughts in chaos. She barely had time to change out of her ruined gown when the door slammed shut behind her. Darius. His wolf radiated menace as he stalked closer, the moonlight catching the sharp angles of his face. His eyes glowed like a predator's, his jaw clenched in fury. You think you've won, he growled, his voice low, dangerous. You think you'll sit beside my father, wear his crown, carry his mark. Evelyn backed against the wall, her wolf bristling, though fear tightened her chest. I never wanted your crown, or your hate. His laugh was sharp, bitter. Liar. Do you know why I rejected you that night? His words sliced through the air, colder than steel. His hand slammed against the wall beside her head, caging her in. His eyes burned into hers, equal parts torment and possession. If I can't have you, he whispered, his voice dropping to a growl, no one will. Evelyn's wolf surged against her skin, torn between fight and submission as Darius's shadow loomed over her, and outside the door, an unfamiliar presence lingered, listening. The air was suffocating in Evelyn's chamber. Darius's hand still burned on the wall beside her head, his words echoing like a curse. If I can't have you, no one will. But before he could close the space between them, a heavy shadow broke through the tension. The door creaked wider, and Kaelin, the Alpha King himself, stepped inside. His presence filled the room like a storm front, silencing the air. Darius stiffened, his wolf retreating instinctively, though his eyes flashed with defiance. Kaelin's gaze flickered between his son's looming form, and Evelyn pressed against the wall, her chest rising with uneven breaths. His jaw clenched, and his voice dropped, deadly calm. Leave, Darius. Father. Now. The command in his tone wasn't just alpha authority. It was final, irrevocable. A king's decree. For a moment, Darius looked as though he would rebel. Then, with a snarl of frustration, he stormed out, the slam of the door rattling through Evelyn's bones. Silence fell. Evelyn's knees trembled, but before she could speak, Kaelin's hand lifted to steady her. His touch was firm, not tender, as though anchoring her to reality. His dark eyes searched hers, burning with something she couldn't decipher. You are not safe here, he murmured. Not from him, not from the court, not from what's coming. Her throat tightened. What do you mean? Kaelin's expression darkened, and when he spoke, it wasn't just to her. It was a vow to the room itself. I intend to claim you. The words stole her breath. Her wolf shifted uneasily inside her, torn between shock and something more primal. The next morning, the entire palace was in uproar. News of the Alpha King's declaration spread like wildfire, spilling into neighboring packs and beyond. To claim the rejected mate of the prince, to name her future Luna Queen. It was an insult, a challenge, a spark to ignite war. Rival alphas began to stir. Messengers arrived with veiled threats, their eyes on Evelyn as though she were a prize to be seized. In the training yards, warriors drilled harder, the scent of battle thickening with each passing day. And Evelyn? She was thrust into the storm's center. Kaelin did not give her time to falter. He pulled her into training, pushing her to discover what pulsed in her blood. He was relentless, his commands sharp, his eyes fierce, not a king, but a warlord shaping a weapon. You have power, he told her as she stumbled under the weight of a sword. Not borrowed, Not given. Yours. Awaken it. Days blurred into nights, exhaustion weighing her body, but something within her stirred. Her wolf, restless, whispering from beneath the surface. On the fourth night, under the blood moon's glow, Kaelin drove her harder than ever. Call her, he growled. Stop fearing her. Command her. Evelyn's chest heaved as she fell to her knees in the training ring, surrounded by the watching court. Her nails dug into the dirt, a roar tearing from her throat. And then, the ground shook, the air shimmered, her wolf burst forth. Not silver, not white, not the muted fur of an omega, but glowing gold, radiant, blinding, ethereal. The brilliance of it seared across the yard, forcing hardened warriors to shield their eyes, the entire court gasping in awe and terror. Even Kaelin, unshakable Alpha King, stared as though witnessing a legend come alive. Evelyn's golden wolf stood at the center of the ring, glowing brighter than the moon, its eyes burning into Kaelin's, and the stunned court whispered one word: Sovereign. The silence was deafening. Evelyn's golden wolf stood in the center of the training yard, fur gleaming like molten sunlight, each strand radiating power. Its eyes, her eyes, glowed with a piercing light that seemed to see through flesh and into the soul. Every warrior, every council member, every servant watching fell into hushed awe, unable to look away. Someone whispered the forbidden word, trembling. Sovereign. The word rippled through the court, like lightning. Whispers turned into frantic murmurs. An Omega? Rejected, shamed, now standing reborn as something beyond an alpha, beyond a king's wolf. A living legend. Kaelin did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his presence steady against the flood of fear and reverence. His voice carried across the stunned silence, sharp and commanding. Behold. His arm lifted toward her, his tone brooking no denial. This is no usurper. This is destiny. Evelyn, my chosen mate, was not rejected. She was revealed. The blood of the Luna Sovereign flows in her veins, and by that blood she is destined to be queen. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in outrage. The council exchanged dark glances, whispers hissing like venomous snakes. Rival alphas shifted restlessly, already tasting the war this declaration promised. But none of it compared to the storm brewing in Darius. The prince stood at the edge of the ring, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles bled. His wolf snarled beneath his skin, barely restrained. His rejection had not erased the bond. He felt it thrumming in his chest, hotter and more undeniable now that her true self had awakened. Humiliation burned through him like acid. His father had taken what was his. No, what should have been his. You'll regret this, Darius spat, his voice a broken snarl that carried through the yard. You think you can claim her? You think you can parade her in front of me? His eyes locked on Evelyn's glowing wolf, his fury shaking his frame. I will take her back, even if I have to overthrow you, father. Gasps echoed. No one had ever dared to speak such words to the Alpha King, yet Darius's vow was not empty. The raw venom in his tone left no doubt. This was war between bloodlines, father against son. Kaelin's wolf surged in response, filling the yard with suffocating dominance. You speak treason, he growled, his voice a dangerous rumble, and treason has only one end. But before the clash could ignite, Evelyn staggered. Her golden wolf's light flickered, pulsing once, twice, before fading like an ember struggling against the wind. No! Kaelin caught her as her body crumpled, limp in his arms. Her skin burned feverishly hot, her breaths shallow, her lips pale. The transformation had drained her utterly, demanding more than her mortal body could give. The golden aura dimmed until nothing remained but the fragile girl, trembling against the Alpha King's chest. Her lashes fluttered, her lips moving faintly. Only one word escaped in a whisper, soft as a prayer, before unconsciousness claimed her. Kaelin! The court froze. The rejected mate of the prince had called the Alpha King's name in her weakest moment. As Kaelin carried her from the training ring, the council exchanged dangerous looks, and Darius's eyes burned with unholy rage. The fragile peace of the kingdom had shattered. The sovereign wolf had chosen her king, and war was inevitable. The world returned slowly. First the soft weight of silken sheets, then the faint crackle of firelight. Evelyn stirred, eyes fluttering open, and found herself not in the cold infirmary, nor her old quarters, but in a room carved of power and shadows. The Alpha King's chamber. She tried to rise, but a hand steadied her, warm, strong, unyielding. Kaelin sat at her side, his sharp eyes softer than she'd ever seen them, though still burning with the dangerous heat of a man used to claiming and never being denied. "You scared me," he said lowly, almost as though it shamed him to admit it. His thumb brushed her wrist where her pulse fluttered too fast. "Your wolf is too powerful for your body yet. You'll destroy yourself if you keep pushing." Her throat tightened. Shame and fury warred in her chest. She hadn't asked for this power. She hadn't asked to be dragged between the prince who had humiliated her and the king who threatened to consume her. "You should have let me fall," she whispered. "Maybe then your court wouldn't be ready to burn me alive." Kaelin's expression hardened, but his hand did not leave hers. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice like smoke wrapping around her. "I would burn them first." The heat of his words pressed into her more than his touch. Her breath caught, traitorous, as her gaze slipped to his mouth. She hated herself for it. Hated how the bond between them pulled like a tether, whispering things she wasn't ready to hear. When his fingers brushed her jaw, the air thickened. His thumb lingered at the hollow of her throat, exactly where the mate's mark would bloom if he claimed her. Her skin tingled, burning with awareness she fought to ignore. "You don't understand," she rasped, her palms pressing to his chest, not to push him away, but to keep herself from pulling him closer. "If I give in, if I let you claim me, I'll lose myself. I'll just be another piece in your war against your son." Kaelin's eyes darkened, a dangerous storm, but beneath it a flicker of something raw, something only she had seen. "No, Evelyn. If I claim you, you won't lose yourself. You'll finally be seen." Her heart slammed against her ribs. For one reckless moment her body leaned into his, her lips a breath away from tasting what she both feared and craved. Then, the doors crashed open with a thunderous slam. Evelyn jerked back, Kaelin rising instantly, his wolf flaring to dominance. But the scent of fury and betrayal that filled the chamber was unmistakable. Darius stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, eyes wild as a storm. His gaze swept over Evelyn, her flushed skin, Kaelin's closeness, the way her hand still clutched his wrist, and then froze on her neck. His face drained of all color, then twisted into horror and rage, because there, faintly glowing against Evelyn's skin where Kaelin's fingers had lingered, was the shimmer of a mate's mark beginning to take shape. Darius's snarl shook the chamber. "You marked her." The chamber fell into a silence so sharp it could cut. Evelyn's pulse thundered in her ears, Kaelin's body tense beside her, but her gaze was locked on the prince. Darius's lips curled back in a snarl, his wolf flashing in his eyes. "You marked her," he spat, his voice breaking like a whip across stone. "You dared to brand my mate as yours." Kaelin's growl rolled through the room, low and dangerous, the sound of a king who had long ruled through fear and strength. "You rejected her, boy. She was never yours to keep." Evelyn flinched at the venom between them. Every word was fuel to the fire sparking in their blood. Darius stormed forward, chest heaving, and the power of his alpha aura flooded the room, slamming against hers until her knees nearly buckled. "I will not stand by while my father steals what was meant for me. If the crown and the throne mean anything, then let it be settled the old way. Blood against blood." Evelyn's breath hitched. A challenge. To the death. Kaelin's expression didn't falter, but his jaw tightened. You would raise claws against your king? Against your blood? You've already betrayed both, Darius snarled, throwing his arms wide. The council sees it. The pack whispers it. You risk war for a woman you don't deserve. His eyes slashed to Evelyn, hot with fury and something darker. If you truly want her, then prove you're still worthy to be king. Evelyn's stomach turned to ice. This wasn't just about her anymore. The throne, the kingdom, the fragile line between father and son, it was all snapping like brittle twine, and she was the spark. Kaelin stepped forward, his dominance pressing against the air. So be it. But understand this, Darius. I will never kill my own son. Their auras collided, crashing into each other like storms. The ground quaked, the air split with snarls and roars, shadows and light tearing across the chamber. Wolves in the palace howled in answer, sensing the challenge that could fracture the kingdom forever. Evelyn's hands trembled as she backed away. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The bond tethered her to both of them, pulling her apart until she thought she would shatter. Stop, she whispered, but her voice was lost in their clash. Claws lengthened, fangs bared. Father against son, king against heir, both willing to tear each other apart for her. Her chest heaved, pain searing through her veins like fire. And then, something inside her broke, or awakened. A golden blaze erupted from her skin, her wolf's roar ripping from her throat. The air itself bent under her power as light flooded the chamber. Kaelin staggered back. Darius's snarl strangled into silence. Both alphas dropped to their knees, their bodies trembling under the crushing weight of her wolf's dominance. Evelyn stood between them, golden eyes blazing, her voice no longer just hers, but layered with the echo of something ancient. Enough, she commanded, and the king and the prince bowed, forced by her wolf's power to kneel before her. The chamber was still trembling with the echo of her command. Kaelin and Darius knelt before her, their bodies bowed, not by choice, but by the sheer gravity of her golden aura. Evelyn's chest rose and fell in ragged gasps, the glow fading from her skin, leaving her shaken and trembling. Kaelin lifted his head slowly, awe flickering in his storm-gray eyes. His lips parted as if to speak, but the doors of the council chamber slammed open. Elders and advisors poured in, drawn by the unnatural surge of power. Their gazes fell on the scene, their king and prince forced to their knees before a trembling omega-turned golden Luna. Whispers erupted like wildfire. She bent them both. Impossible. No wolf can. She is not a blessing. She's a curse. Evelyn staggered backward, pressing a hand to her chest, wishing the floor would swallow her whole. The word curse clung to her ears like thorns. One elder, robes dragging across the floor, pointed a gnarled finger at her. This girl is a threat to the balance of the kingdom. A wolf with such unchecked power could topple not just alphas, but entire bloodlines. She must be watched, controlled, or... His eyes darkened. Eliminated. Darius growled low, rising despite the lingering weight of her command. His fury now had a new direction. She's dangerous. You've all seen it. She will destroy us all if you let her live. Kaelin's snarl cut him off, sharp as steel. Enough. She is under my protection. Any hand raised against her will answer to me. His voice cracked like thunder through the chamber, but the ripple of unease in the council did not fade. That night, Evelyn sat alone in her chambers, hugging herself against the silence. The golden wolf within her stirred restlessly, whispering things she couldn't yet understand. Salvation, ruin, destiny. Words she had never asked for, yet now carried like chains. The door creaked. Lucian, Kaelin's most loyal beta, slipped inside. His expression was grave. You need to know the truth, Evelyn. Long before you were born, the seers spoke of one called the Golden Luna, a woman whose wolf would either save the kingdom or plunge it into ruin. His eyes softened, though his voice was edged with fear. And now, it seems you are her. Her breath caught, her hands trembling. Ruin? Salvation? I don't want to be either. I never asked for this. Lucien's gaze dropped. Prophecy doesn't care what we ask. Later, when sleep finally dragged her down, Evelyn awoke with a start. A strange tug pulled her from her bed, down the silent corridors and into the forgotten library of the palace. Dust and cobwebs coated shelves that hadn't been touched in decades. Her fingers brushed against a half-buried chest. Something inside called to her. She pried it open, the hinges groaning, and unearthed an ancient scroll bound in faded gold ribbon. As her trembling hands unfurled it, she read the words etched in ink that glowed faintly, pulsing as if alive. The golden Luna shall rise, bound not by love, but by choice, claimed by a king or a tyrant. Her heart stopped. Behind her the shadow stirred, and unseen eyes watched as she clutched the prophecy to her chest. The ancient library was suffocating in its silence, yet Evelyn felt the weight of unseen eyes crawling across her skin. Her pulse thundered as she clutched the glowing scroll to her chest. The shadows lingered a moment longer, then melted away as if they had never been. By dawn, the palace was buzzing with frenzied preparation. The hall was being draped in banners of silver and black, the royal crest embroidered in gold thread. Servants whispered her name as she passed, some with awe, others with fear. The golden Luna, the Omega who bent kings and princes alike. Kaelin stood tall at the far end of the throne room, a crown of obsidian and silver resting on a velvet cushion. His eyes locked on hers the moment she entered, and the stern Alpha King softened into something gentler. Today, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber, you will no longer be the girl they scorned. You will be my Luna Queen. Evelyn's breath caught. The prophecy's words whispered in her mind like a curse, claimed by a king or a tyrant. But before she could dwell on it, the trumpets blared. The ceremony had begun. The court gathered. Darius stood off to the side, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with unspoken rage. The council sat stiffly, their disapproval hidden beneath ceremonial masks. All eyes were on Evelyn as she stepped forward toward Kaelin, the crown gleaming between them. But then, a scream tore through the hall. The doors exploded inward as masked warriors stormed the chamber, blades glinting, their movements swift and merciless. Red liquid splattered across marble as guards fell beneath the ambush. Chaos erupted. The air filled with snarls, the clash of steel, and the roar of wolves shifting mid-battle. "Protect the king," someone shouted. Kaelin was already a whirlwind of fury, his wolf glowing beneath his skin as he tore through enemies with devastating precision. Lucien appeared at Evelyn's side, shielding her with lethal speed, but the attackers kept coming. Not for Kaelin, not for the crown, for her. "They're after me," Evelyn realized, her voice breaking as she backed toward the dais. The golden wolf inside her surged, begging to be unleashed. But before she could summon it, a hand clamped around her wrist. "Evelyn!" Her head whipped around. Darius. His eyes glowed like molten silver, his grip unyielding. He dragged her toward the shadows even as warriors clashed around them. "Let go," she cried, struggling. But his breath was hot against her ear, his voice low and venomous. "You were never meant for him." His arm coiled around her waist, hauling her close as he yanked her through a hidden passageway. "You were always mine." She thrashed, but his strength was unbreakable. Behind them, the ceremony dissolved into blood and chaos. And then his lips brushed her ear, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "If you're mine by force, then so be it." The coronation is shattered by betrayal. Blood spills, chaos reigns, and in the midst of it all, Darius abducts Evelyn, determined to claim her against her will. The walls of the passage were narrow, damp with condensation, and Evelyn's screams echoed uselessly against the stone. Darius's grip was unrelenting, iron around her wrist, as he dragged her deeper into the underground tunnels beneath the palace. "Darius, stop!" she shouted, her voice breaking with rage and fear. She clawed at his hand, kicked at his legs, but he moved like a predator, every step purposeful. At last, he shoved her through a heavy iron door. The chamber beyond was dim, lit only by flickering torches. Shackles clanged against the walls, the stench of confinement thick in the air. Before she could resist, Darius spun her and snapped cold metal cuffs around her wrists. Evelyn's golden wolf surged forward, her body trembling as its light shimmered under her skin. "You can't cage me," she hissed, eyes glowing faintly. Darius leaned in close, his breath hot against her cheek, his own wolf growling just beneath the surface. "Can't I?" His hand slid toward her neck, toward the place where Kalen's faint mark had begun to take root. The golden wolf inside Evelyn howled. Power erupted from her chest, a blinding flare that sent Darius staggering back. She lunged forward, teeth bared, her wolf half breaking free. Her jaws snapped dangerously close to his throat, the heat of her fury searing the air. Darius slammed her against the wall, his own wolf blazing to the surface, eyes like molten silver. "You'd kill me before letting me mark you," he growled. "Good. That's the fire I always wanted to see in you." Her breath came in ragged gasps, the shackles digging into her wrists, but her voice dripped with venom. "You rejected me. You humiliated me in front of everyone, and now you think you can force me?" Darius's expression twisted. For a fleeting moment, she saw something raw, pain, desperation, hidden beneath the fury. His voice broke low, hoarse with something darker than anger. "You think I wanted to reject you?" His hands curled into fists at his sides. "Do you know what I saw the night our bond formed?" Evelyn stilled, confusion cutting through her rage. His gaze locked with hers, haunted and feverish. "I saw you, not at my side, but at his. My father's." His voice cracked, trembling with bitterness. "I saw him marking you, crowning you, loving you. The bond was never mine to keep, it was his. And I couldn't bear it." Her breath hitched. The prophecy, the golden luna. It all tangled together in a sickening knot. "You destroyed me." "Because of a vision?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Darius's jaw tightened, his wolf rippling beneath his skin. He stepped closer until his face hovered inches from hers, his words like venom. "If you belong to him," he snarled, every word dripping with twisted devotion and hatred, "I'd rather destroy you." Evelyn, shackled and trembling, realizes Darius's obsession isn't born of rejection, but of a vision that condemned her fate. His final words seal the danger. If she cannot belong to him, he will ensure she belongs to no one. The words still echoed in Evelyn's ears, venom curling around her heart. "If you belong to him, I'd rather destroy you." Darius's eyes glowed silver in the dim torchlight, his wolf dangerously close to taking full control. Her wrists burned where the shackles dug into her skin, yet the golden wolf within her stirred, restless, pressing against the iron bonds. Suddenly a sound thundered through the cavernous underground, an animalistic roar that rattled the stone walls. It was not Darius's. It was deeper, darker, more commanding. Kalen. The iron door exploded off its hinges, shattering against the wall. Kalen stormed in, his presence filling the chamber like a tempest unleashed. His aura of dominance was suffocating, the weight of a true alpha king bearing down on every stone, every breath. His eyes glowed like burning coals, and his wolf's growl reverberated through the ground itself. "Release her," Kalen commanded, his voice edged with lethal fury. Darius snarled, stepping between them, his wolf breaking free in shimmering silver fur. "She is mine," he bellowed, desperation cracking in his tone. "She was always mine, until you poisoned her." Kalen's answering growl shook the chamber. "You rejected her. You left her broken and humiliated. And now you dare cage what is not yours?" His gaze slid past Darius to Evelyn, shackled and trembling, and something primal snapped within him. With a movement so fast it blurred, Kalen lunged. Father and son collided, wolf against wolf, silver against shadow. The chamber quaked as their bodies slammed into stone, claws sparking, teeth snapping. Evelyn cried out, her golden wolf surging forward, but the shackles bound her too tightly. She could only watch, her heart tearing as the two alphas, blood and blood, fought with a ferocity that promised death. Then Kaelin's power surged. Shadows wrapped around Darius, pinning him, forcing him to his knees. Kaelin's fangs grazed his son's throat, one final bite away from ending it. But he stopped. His chest heaved, his grip trembling. For all his rage, he could not spill his son's blood. "Go," Kaelin growled through clenched teeth, his voice a broken storm. "Run while I still have mercy in me." Darius's silver eyes blazed with hatred, but also fear. With a snarl, he shifted and fled into the shadows, his vow trailing behind him like a curse. "This isn't over. If I can't have her, I'll burn everything until none of us do." Silence fell. Kaelin turned to Evelyn, his wolf receding, leaving behind a man whose fury was eclipsed only by the raw fear of losing her. He shattered the shackles with his bare hands, gathering her into his arms. As her body collapsed against his chest, Evelyn felt it, something pulling deep inside her, something ancient and binding. His touch seared into her very soul. A warmth spread through her veins, sinking deeper than the bond Darius once rejected. Her golden wolf shuddered, her heart pounded. The truth struck like lightning. A new bond was forming, Kaelin's claim, burning into her soul. As Kaelin carries her out of the darkness, Evelyn realizes she is no longer free. A new tether has begun to weave between them, one she cannot resist, one that may either save her or consume her completely. Evelyn stirred in Kaelin's arms, her skin still tingling where the shattered shackles had scarred her wrists. Every step he took seemed to echo inside her chest, as if her heartbeat was sinking to his. The bond was there, silent, powerful, alive. She wanted to resist, to deny it, but her golden wolf surged with every brush of his aura. Kaelin set her down in his chamber, his hands lingering longer than necessary at her waist as though he feared she might vanish. His voice was rough, unguarded. "You're safe now." But Evelyn wasn't sure. The moment her feet touched the marble floor, a heat rushed through her veins, sharp and electric. Her knees buckled and a scream tore from her throat. Kaelin caught her, eyes widening as light, pure, searing gold, began to bleed from her skin. Her wolf was no longer whispering. It was roaring. The chamber filled with radiance brighter than torches, brighter than the moonlight streaming through the windows. Evelyn's body arched and suddenly the light twisted, one side soothing, healing Kaelin's bruises and closing the claw marks across his chest, the other side dripping into a swirling shadow that made the stone beneath them crack. Kaelin shielded her with his body, snarling at the guards who had rushed in. "Stay back." The council burst into the room, their faces pale, their voices sharp with fear. "This power, it's unnatural. She'll destroy us all." Evelyn collapsed to her knees, panting, trembling as both light and shadow flickered around her like battling storms. "I can't control it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You don't need to," Kaelin said, crouching before her, cupping her face with hands that radiated steadiness. "I'll shield you until you can." His eyes blazed as he turned to the council. "Touch her, and I will end you myself." Gasps filled the chamber. The Alpha King had never spoken with such open possession, such unyielding threat. Evelyn clutched his wrist, her golden eyes, no longer just brown, no longer just human, meeting his. For the first time, she felt it fully. The wolf within her was awake, not caged, not dormant, alive. The council members whispered among themselves. Golden Luna, the prophecy. Fear laced their tones. Before Kaelin could speak again, the heavy doors slammed open. A bloodied messenger staggered in, falling to one knee. His cloak was torn, his chest heaving. "My king," he rasped, lifting his gaze to Kaelin, then flicking it nervously to Evelyn. "Prince Darius. He has fled beyond the borders. He is no longer alone." Kalen's grip on Evelyn's hand tightened. "Speak." The messenger swallowed hard, voice quaking. "He has sworn allegiance to the Shadow Court." The chamber fell into stunned silence. Evelyn's golden wolf snarled inside her, the light flickering into a dangerous storm. The Shadow Court, whispered in terror even among alphas, was not just an enemy. It was darkness given flesh, and Darius had just delivered himself into its arms. Evelyn rises, her eyes glowing gold, shadows curling at her fingertips as light burns through the chamber. For the first time she feels her wolf's voice clearly. If he's allied with the court, then war is already here. The council chamber was still bathed in Evelyn's golden light when the great doors rattled again. This time not from mortal hands, but from something far darker. A cold wind swept through, extinguishing every torch, plunging the palace into shadows that not even her glow could chase away. Kalen immediately pushed Evelyn behind him, his wolf thrumming with lethal intent. "He's here," he growled. And then Darius stepped into the hall. But he was no longer the prince she remembered. His once bright eyes now gleamed with the violet sheen of corruption, threaded with shadows that writhed beneath his skin as though alive. His aura pressed down on the court like suffocating smoke. His wolf was gone, or perhaps twisted beyond recognition, its presence sharp, hollow, monstrous. "Father," Darius said, his voice edged with mockery and something inhuman. "Beloved mate." His gaze slid to Evelyn, drinking her in. "Do you like my gift? The Shadow Court has made me more than a prince. They have made me their weapon." Evelyn's wolf snarled within her, light flaring instinctively in her palms. Shadows, however, licked at her arms too, betraying the truth she feared. Part of her power pulsed in time with his. "You sold your soul," Kalen spat, stepping forward, his aura crashing against Darius's. The marble floor beneath them cracked from the collision of forces. "You are no son of mine." But Darius only smiled, and the sight of his teeth, sharpened unnaturally, blackened at the tips, made Evelyn's breath catch. "I didn't come to beg for your approval. I came to claim what was always mine, the throne, and her." Gasps rang through the court. Evelyn's light burst stronger, illuminating her golden eyes, but Darius raised a clawed hand, and shadows slithered toward her like chains. She blasted them apart, but the effort made her knees weaken. Kalen's roar shook the chamber as he shifted halfway, his wolf's aura merging with his body. "You will not touch her." Darius tilted his head, unbothered, and then dropped his final blow. "You misunderstand, Father. I don't need to touch her." His violet gaze burned into Evelyn's soul, dark power humming against her golden wolf. The Shadow Court has already chosen her. She is their queen. The chamber erupted into chaos. The council shouted. Guards scrambled. Evelyn's breath hitched as her light faltered, her shadows surging instead, as though answering his claim. Kalen's arm went rigid around her waist. His voice, low and edged with lethal fury, whispered against her ear, "They will not take you." But deep inside, Evelyn wasn't sure, because the shadows within her had stirred, as if recognizing Darius's words. Evelyn staggers, clutching her chest, as a ghostly crown of shadow flickers briefly above her head. Proof that the Shadow Court's claim isn't a lie. The ghostly crown shimmered above Evelyn's head before vanishing, but the damage was done. Every wolf in the chamber had seen it. Whispers spread like wildfire. The Shadow Court has claimed her. Kalen's roar silenced them. His golden aura erupted, shattering the throne's dais into shards. "She is mine," he thundered. "She is our Luna." But Darius only laughed, the sound laced with shadow making the walls tremble. "No, Father. She was destined for me all along." His body twisted, bones snapping, fur spilling across his skin as he shifted fully. What emerged was no ordinary wolf. It was monstrous, towering, with blackened fur veined in violet light, eyes glowing like twin stars of corruption. The court scattered in terror as Kalen shifted too, his colossal golden-brown wolf colliding with his son. The clash shook the earth itself. Stone crumbled, glass shattered. Each strike of fang and claw was thunder, each roar an earthquake. Evelyn staggered back, her chest heaving, the pull of both wolves tearing her apart. Her wolf screamed within her, "Do something." And so she did. Her skin shimmered, light erupting from her bones as her golden wolf broke free. She wasn't sure how, whether it was instinct, desperation, or destiny. But suddenly she stood not as Evelyn the Omega, not as the rejected mate, but as the radiant golden wolf. Her fur gleamed with an inner light so blinding, the battlefield froze. Kaelin's massive head swung toward her, eyes glowing with awe. Darius snarled, shadows whipping around his hulking form. "Mine!" he howled. She leapt between them, her golden aura colliding with Kaelin's warmth on one side and Darius's chilling void on the other. Her power flared instinctively, a blast of light and shadow surging outward, forcing both kings to their knees. The battlefield, once filled with screams, the clash of steel, and the howls of wolves, fell into stunned silence. But Evelyn felt it, the power tearing at her from both ends, the light and the shadow fighting for dominance inside her. Her paws trembled, her glow began to fracture. She realized with icy horror that this strength wasn't infinite. If she kept pushing, her body would burn out. Still, she raised her head high, light and shadow twining together around her form. "I will not let them destroy each other. I will not let this kingdom fall." She released everything. A shockwave of brilliance exploded across the battlefield, searing through shadow, mending broken stone, silencing even the cries of war. Wolves on both sides collapsed, bowing to her radiance. Kaelin and Darius alike were thrown back, crashing into the earth, and then Evelyn staggered, golden fur dimming. Her body flickered, the glow peeling away like ashes in the wind. She looked down and saw her own paws thinning, her strength siphoned into the earth itself. Her wolf's voice echoed in her mind, faint, breaking. Every gift demands a price. Evelyn collapses in her fading wolf form, her body withering as if consumed by her own light, while Kaelin and Darius rise again, both roaring her name. The battlefield was a ruin of scorched stone and trembling earth. Evelyn's golden wolf form flickered, shrinking, her strength unraveling into sparks that dissolved in the air. She collapsed, her body reverting to human, frail and pale against the dust. "Evelyn!" Kaelin's voice thundered across the field. His massive wolf shifted mid-stride, fur peeling away to reveal the Alpha King's towering form. He fell to his knees beside her, gathering her fragile body into his arms. Her chest rose shallowly, barely a breath left in her. But even as Kaelin cradled her, another figure stirred in the rubble. Darius, his shadow form cracked and bleeding violet light, staggered upright. His eyes burned with hatred and hunger. "She's breaking because she tried to be both," he rasped, his voice echoing like two beings speaking at once. "But her darkness belongs to me." Kaelin's head snapped up, his fury almost feral. "You will never touch her again." He pressed his forehead to Evelyn's, whispering words only she could hear. "Forgive me, little wolf." Then he bit into his wrist, golden blood spilling, and pressed it against her lips. A bond older than time unfurled. The binding rite. Light surged through Evelyn's veins. She gasped, her body arching, golden threads weaving into her skin. Kaelin's aura poured into her, entwining with her own, stitching the frayed pieces of her soul. But the cost was clear. His strength waned as hers grew, the Alpha King surrendering part of his life force to tether hers to his. The court gasped as the glow wrapped around them both. Two silhouettes, one crowned in gold, the other cloaked in light, fused together, their bond unmistakable, not prince and omega, not king and subject, but eternal mates. When Evelyn's eyes finally opened, they gleamed with molten fire. She rose, still held by Kaelin, but this time her power radiated steady, balanced, light and shadow flowing as one. The pack dropped to their knees, one by one, bowing to the Luna Sovereign reborn. Even the council that had once cursed her lowered their heads, trembling. "The Golden Luna," they whispered, "the Queen of Light and Shadow." Kaelin's voice carried like a vow. "No more division, no more war. Today we are one pack. And this," his arm tightened around Evelyn, his queen, "is your Luna." For the first time, Evelyn felt no shame, no rejection, no fear, only power and belonging. The kingdom roared its allegiance. But as the cries of triumph rose into the night, Evelyn's breath caught. A whisper slithered into her mind, cold as ice, dripping with venom. "This isn't over." Her pulse stilled. She knew that voice. "Darius, you carry my darkness too." Her vision wavered, a shadow flickering at the edge of her golden light. She stood tall, smiling for her people, for Kaelin, her king, her mate. But deep inside she knew the war was not ended. It had only changed. Evelyn, now the Golden Luna and eternal mate to the Alpha King, hears Darius's voice inside her, proof that his darkness still lingers within her soul.